Well, I'm going to describe the map of Colorado to you. Colorado is the United States. Anyway, it's basically a rectangle. It's a bit wider from side to side and it's from top to bottom. Right, so it's a horizontal rectangle or a vertical rectangle. Yeah, it's a shape like a computer screen rather than a bag, for example. Now the Rocky Mountains from a line which goes from the top of the map to the bottom more easily halfway across the stage. A horizontal line then, no vertical line, so it forms like a wall to separate the east from the west, okay? Now the Colorado River starts in the Rockies and flows westwards. So it forms a horizontal line above halfway up on the left-hand side of the map. It flows westwards, you say? To the left of the map, okay, now the last thing is Denver, which is the main city in the state. How do you spell that? D-A-N-V-E-R. Right, okay. Okay, so Denver is a little to the east of the Rocky Mountains and a little more than half up. Okay, it's in the northwest of the state then? No, the northeast of the state is to the east of the mountains. Okay, I always get west and east mixed up. There are still some people who are convinced that climate change is a reality. That is a big scare created by environmentalists to further their own political agenda. But there is one group of people who don't need to be convinced. They already know that the climate is changing. There are the Australian farmers, with Australia suffering one of the worst droughts on record. Many farmers are seeing their farmers turn into Dust Bowls. New South Wales farmer Rod Perry has changed the approach to farming to survive the change. He no longer runs so many thousands of merino sheep. But instead of farms, native trees all sales the sands for land care projects. He no longer ruins the soil on his land by using massive amounts of chemicals and fertilizers. His farm is a model of sustainable farming methods and an oasis in what is fast, becoming almost a desert. I asked Mr. Perry what made him change his approach to farming. I think it was the big drought in 1982 that got me thinking. Cause I saw my 1,000 acre farm and it looked like the Sahara. It was a heartbreaking really. So I promised myself that if the farm survived, I'd never let that happen again. After the 1982 drought, Mr. Perry reduced the number of sheep on his farm, planted trees, and stopped using many chemicals on the land. He believes that many Australian farmers take the wrong approach. You've got to work with the land, not against it. When the first settlers came here, they thought they could farm it just like England. Cutting down all the trees. And a lot of farmers still think the same way. But you see, this isn't England. The climate's different. Yeah, okay, in good years you can farm intensively like that, but the fact is dry here. We've always had droughts, but they're getting more frequent. So we have to change the way that we farm. Take a more balanced approach. Plant trees, for example. They help to keep the soil healthy and reduce evaporation, and they help to prevent soil erosion in strong winds. I asked Mr. Perry if it was an easy to make the change to sustainable farming. It was hard at first. You have to make sacrifices in the short term, but in the long run it's better because you've got healthier soil and you can farm without damaging the land, and you're in the better position to survive the changing climate. Now Max is presenting the edition of the interview as part of the Generation Next season. It's running throughout this week, and the idea is that young people from all over the world are being given the chance to take part in the programs and to contribute to the network. And we asked Max who he would most like the interview. He chose as his guest a man famous throughout the world for his comedy roles as part of the Monty Python team. But also for this, being as explorer, he has circumnavigated the globe from North to South Pole, circled the Pacific Rim, crossed the Himalayas, and traversed the Sahara. And he's chronicled his travels in a series of TV documentaries and books. But I should let Max take over from here. Hello, I'm Max Sebastian, and today I will be interviewing one of the Britain's most loved comedians and travelers, actor, traveler, Rajat. How has being a well-known comedian helped you later on, and what was it taught you? I think it probably gives you a certain freedom to look at the world. As a comedian, your job is to comment on things or see the humor in things that are going wrong that other people might take terribly seriously. And I feel sometimes as a comedian, I am on the outside looking at it. You are on the kind of given the court just a role, and it's quite useful. I found it especially used during travels. Humor is something shared all over the world, and you can make as big an idiot out of yourself. As well as do. Not knowing the language, not knowing the customs, and Islam countries eating with the left hand instead of the right. I don't know this sort of things, and yet, if you can make joke about it afterwards, it somehow brings you closer to the people, and everyone says, "Oh well, we all do things like that." So I'm really quite glad that I'm so blessed with a more than my first. Being the powerful communicator you are, when you travel, you manage to transcend barriers of language, culture, and difference. So how do you manage to communicate so clearly, do you think? Well, I don't. I try not to put too much effort into it, because I think I have tried to reading all the books and looking up all of the information about the country, and yet you're actually talking to an eventually. However, there, it may be someone telling you a ticket in railway station, it may be sort of a barber on the street in India. I once encountered a barber who was shaved me with his cutthroat razor, and there was a large crowd of people around, and I wondered why it was so special, I was just having, a shave on the street. People do that, and I turned it out he was blind, and I only realized that as the sort of knife was halfway down my throat. But you have to just look at people as individuals, and well, as I've said, humor is useful. And usually people will be offering you some kind of service or something like that. That's usually fine. You have the food, you have the drink, very important. The exchange of food and drink is very important. There is no point saying, "Oh, I don't know, I don't want that, I'm afraid," because people get. So how big part does travel play in your life, like the family life and things like that? Well, it plays a very big part in my life, really, because I've chosen to do this travel series now for 18 years. Really, I was only going to do one around the world in 80 days, was going to be the one off, and I'd get back to writing films and doing a bit of comedy and doing a bit of acting, but I found such sort of satisfaction from doing the traveling that I've done another one and then another one, and we're still doing it now, and it's good for the mind, it's good for the body, I learn a lot. I really feel I need it. My family are pretty good, my children are sort of grown, but my wife is not a good traveler, and she's quite glad to get rid of me. I think for certain periods, she lives her life the way she likes to live, and all that. And absence makes the hair grow fonder and all those sort of things. I sort of feel now, and I don't naturally want to quite so far and take such risks, or maybe that's just something to do with age, or something to do with I have a grandson now who's only about 8 months, and I never remember my grandparents at all. Neither of my grandfathers, so I sort of want to be there with him. So I'm at the moment doing a European journey, which is quite thought, but it's closer to home. Out of all places you've been to, which destination has stayed in your heart the longest? Oh, very, very difficult indeed. I do have a very soft spot for a part of Russia. called Kamchatka. It's a peninsula which is on the Russian Pacific. It's a national park. There are about 20 active volcanoes in this peninsula. Also a lot of geysers. There's a lot of sort of bubbling, hot springs and all that sort of thing. Hardly anyone goes there, and it was I just remember it being like a wonderland. I felt I was really, really fortunate to be there, and it is a place I'd love to go back. I love to walk through it. The rivers are still full of fish. There is still a sort of feeling. I mean, the first days of creation there, everything is very bright and the colors are wonderful. And it's different and very unfamiliar, so I've got a little part of that I always want to go back to Kamchatka.